Last summer I found that this section of the garden in the corner of the fence behind me dried out excessively, and it wasn't that good for growing things because it just, no matter how much you watered it, it dried out way too quickly. The reason, I believe, is the trees that are immediately behind it, which are very close to it. So that means that those trees have to go. Tree roots can extend quite a distance, and particularly eucalypts are really good at drying out the ground and sucking nutrient out of it. So today's job is to get those trees down and on the ground. In this clump of trees there are 3 eucalypt trees and a 4th blackwood tree. Now, this video's intention is not to teach you how to cut down a tree. My learning of cutting down trees was from my father, who was a tree feller, back in the days when they used crosscut saws and axes. Falling trees with crosscut saws was a little bit different to how you fall them with chainsaws. But the basic principles of evaluating the weight of the tree and which way it will fall, of course, still apply. Looking directly up these trees, you can get an idea as to where the weight is and which direction it's possible to fall the tree. So looking at this tree, I believe that I can actually get it to fall right down there where that tripod is. But the first tree that I'll fall is this little light one here. It's very easy to get out of the road, but before even starting that process I do need to clean the underneath so that there's nothing to trip up on, and so it is safe for me to work so that I can get away easy when it's falling. Of course, realistically these trees should have been fallen before the fence was built, before the garden was built, because it would have been much safer and much easier. And it's a reminder that we do need to have a good distance from trees, between trees in our gardens, and before we build structures, make sure they're well back. The reason they weren't fallen at the time is, of course, that was quite some years ago, and they were much smaller and didn't look near as threatening, nor were the roots going out as far and creating a problem. And it looked nice to leave those trees, but really that was a mistake. Well, that was the easy one, but being a light tree, of course, it hung up on anything in its path. But I'm not going to worry about that for now. It may come down when I fall one of the bigger ones, otherwise I'll just pull it down with the tractor. Now you'll notice in this stump how there's a piece of it that is dead inside, where it had had a damage on the outside of the tree, and so then it is actually weak in the middle. So the same thing is the case with this big tree. It has a weak section in it, and that concerns me a little. Looking at this side, you'll see how it's been damaged, and down the bottom here is quite rotten. So that means that in it there may be sections that are quite weak, and that makes it rather unpredictable in its falling. What I don't want is it to go this way, which is where the garden is and the greenhouse. It would be a real problem. But weight wise, I'm pretty certain that I can get it to fall exactly the opposite direction without any problems. However, there's still the risk that even a tree this size will hang up on some of these branches up here, but it's less likely than a light tree. With a tree like this that has quite thick bark on it, like many eucalypts do, it makes it easier cutting, and to see what you're doing, it's less likely to bind in the chain if you get the bark off first. So I'm going to clear it off. be a little bit awkward. I'm not ambidextrous with an axe. I use it left-handed. Not that I'm left-handed in anything else. Now that I've cut the front out, you can actually see how some of this timber in here, it might be difficult in this light to see, but is dead and considerably weaker than the timber on this side. It may mean that it falls slightly the wrong direction, though this should hold it and help swing it around to bring it more towards this tree rather than the one over there. Well, that didn't go exactly the way I would have preferred it to go, but I did half expect it to go that way. It's hung up on a tree branch, and that means that the only safe way to get it down is to get the tractor and to pull the base off the stump. So if I come in here with the tractor, I should be able to pull the tree off the stump here, and that will then allow it to drop and hopefully come down onto the ground. There are other ways of doing this, but none of them are safe. I took the opportunity while the tractor was here to pull that small tree out of the road. Now that those two are out of the road, we're left with the largest of the eucalypts, and it's a fairly big tree, but thankfully it has quite a lean on it. Looking directly up, there is quite a lean, and it means that it will go down this way. Now, so before I bring it down, I'll clean these this small scrub out of the road so that that won't be in the road if I need to move it or pull it later, because otherwise if I just fall straight through that, it'll make a mess. And I do need to clean it to actually fall this blackwood as well, so I'll have to clean that up first. My experience is that falling this type of small scrub is far more dangerous than the big trees. The smaller stuff is more likely to entangle and create havoc with your chainsaw. It's also far more likely to have branches sitting on top of it that has fallen from the larger trees, and when you cut it that'll come down on top of your head. Hence I've gone for the hard hat. Okay, so that tree went down with no real problems, and having a lot more weight, it really just cleared its way through the bush and broke any branches that were necessary, and down it came on the ground. So that's the three easy ones over. Now it's the difficult one that's left. Okay, the battery ran out for a bit there, so we lost a little bit, and while it's been charging I've done a little bit of work on this last tree, which is a real problem. Alright, there's a widowmaker up there. A bit of wind's come up, and that's going to create a little bit of a complication. Thankfully though, it is blowing the right direction, the direction I want the tree to fall, but it won't make things any easier. Now the problem with this tree, as I said, is that the weight is all on this left side, which would go straight towards my greenhouse, and that of course would be a disaster to have it fall that way. So what I'm trying to do is to get it the other direction. The only way that I have to do this is to put a rope on it and to pull it with the tractor. I was intending to use a block for this so that I wouldn't have a direct pull and would have more power, but I simply can't find it. It's somewhere amongst my mess. While the battery was charging, I did cut one limb off the tree. That is a slight reduction in weight on that side, but still looking up you'll see that virtually all the limbs are on the wrong side, and there's heaps of weight out there, which is a real problem. And it's not made any easier here at the base, because this tree is far from round. It has big hollows in it on two sides, and that's really going to make it far more difficult to work out exactly where to put the hinge. What I have to do here is to hinge it in such a way that it's not actually the same as where the weight is, but I'm going sideways a little, so in the event of a failure it would go back and be going onto the garden space rather than the greenhouse. However, failure we can't consider. It's got to go the right way. So I've got to leave enough wood in here that it won't fall sideways on me from the other directions that I'm not wanting it to fall, but I'm still able to actually pull it on that hinge with the tractor and break it off and get it to go the direction I want. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, but just have to get started. Well, that worked absolutely perfectly, exactly as I had planned, which is unusual. Not everything today has gone to plan, but that did. And it came down on the ground right where I wanted it. Looking at the stump here, I can see that the center of it was actually rather rotten, and it was only on each side here, this one and over here, that was actually holding in that hinge area. It's a little bit up the center there, so it wasn't so strong, but it was giving good balance so that it wasn't going to tip sideways on me. And cutting, I didn't feel even any tension on the saw here. It didn't try and jam at all, so that was really good. So all in all, a really great success. There's a lot of cleaning up to do, but that can wait for another day. This timber won't be wasted. It'll make some really good firewood for coming years. These trees, the roots will continue to live for a little while, and the stumps will continue to suck some nutrient out of the ground, but that will quickly reduce because trees of this size tend to die off reasonably quickly. So now it's time to pack away the tools and call it a good day, a successful day, and I'm looking forward to some more successful gardening in this corner in the spring, hoping to plant tomatoes and experiment even with some watermelons in this corner.